Hey guys, tonight you're not walking into a cheerful story about a beloved children's author. You're stepping into a house in Missouri where a 64-year-old woman is holding a letter that makes no sense, where every word on the page is about to crack open a secret that will haunt American literature for the next 90 years, and where a daughter's fingerprints are all over a manuscript that her mother never submitted. Settle in. Get comfortable. Because you're about to live through the moment when Laura Ingalls Wilder discovers that her daughter has been rewriting her life without permission. You're standing in Rocky Ridge Farm, Mansfield, Missouri, in February 1931. Outside, the Depression has turned the entire country into a graveyard of failed dreams. Banks are closing. Farms are foreclosing. The air smells like desperation and dust, and inside this small farmhouse, the bills are stacked higher than the firewood. Your name is Laura Ingalls Wilder. You're 64 years old, your back aches from decades of farm work, and your hands are rough from a lifetime of survival. 3 years ago, you believed you had one last chance to make money from the only thing you had left, your memories. You wrote them down in pencil on cheap-lined tablets, 74,000 words about your childhood on the prairie, about blizzards and grasshoppers and a family that kept moving west because staying still meant starving. You called it Pioneer Girl. You handed it to your daughter Rose because Rose was a professional writer, a journalist who had travelled the world and written for the biggest magazines in America. Rose typed it up, sent it to publishers, and every single one rejected it. Too flat, they said. Too factual. No crescendo. The manuscript that was supposed to save you died in a stack of rejection letters, and you went back to mending clothes and worrying about the mortgage. But now, in your hand, is a letter from Alfred A. Knopf, one of the most prestigious publishers in New York. The editor, Marion Fiery, is praising a manuscript called When Grandma Was a Little Girl. She loves it. She wants to publish it. She wants 15,000 more words. You stare at the letter. You never sent a manuscript to Knopf. You never wrote anything called When Grandma Was a Little Girl. You look up at Rose, who is standing in the doorway with her arms crossed and a look on her face that you cannot quite read. It is not guilt. It is not apology. It is something closer to impatience, as if she has been waiting for you to catch up to a plan she made weeks ago without telling you. Rose speaks first. She says she took your manuscript, the one that failed, and she ran it through her typewriter one more time. She cut it down to 21 pages. She focused on the stories about Pa, about the big woods, about the wolf and the panther and the long winter nights. She made it into a picture book for children. She sent it to Knopf under your name, and now they want more. You do not know whether to feel grateful or betrayed. Rose has done this before, taken your words and rearranged them, polished them, sent them out into the world with her fingerprints all over them, but this time she did not ask. This time she made decisions about your life, your memories, your voice, and she did it in secret. Rose is already talking about the next steps. She tells you to get a tablet, to put down the other 15,000 words, to expand the manuscript into a full book. Her voice is brisk, professional, the voice of someone who knows how publishing works, who has written bestsellers and biographies and novels that made her one of the highest-paid journalists in America before the stock market crashed and took everything she owned. You want to argue. You want to ask why she did not tell you. But you also know that you need this. You need the money. Almanzo, your husband, can barely walk after the diphtheria left him paralyzed. The farm is failing. Your savings are gone. This letter in your hand is the first piece of good news you have had in years. And it only exists because your daughter rewrote your life without permission. You sit down at the kitchen table, you pick up a pencil, you open a lined tablet, and you begin to write the story of your childhood in the big woods of Wisconsin, the story that will become Little House in the Big Woods, the story that will launch a series of books that will sell 60 million copies and define American childhood for generations. But you do not know that yet. You only know that Rose is standing over your shoulder, watching, waiting, already planning the next edit, the next revision, the next secret she will keep while she turns your memories into something the world will love. And somewhere in the back of your mind a question is forming, a question you will never ask out loud. Whose story is this, really? Whose voice will the world hear when they read these books? Yours or hers? The answer will take 90 years to uncover, but tonight, in this small farmhouse in Missouri, the collaboration begins, the secret begins, and the lie that will become the truth begins to take shape on the page. But to understand how Rose became the woman who would rewrite her mother's life, you have to go back. You have to go back to 1909, to San Francisco, to a young woman who was running from everything her mother represented. You have to go back to the year Rose Wilder married a man who promised her adventure and gave her nothing but heartbreak. You have to go back to the year she lost something so devastating that she buried it deeper than any grave and never spoke of it again. You have to go back to the beginning of the lie. You are Rose Wilder Lane. You're 22 years old, and you're standing on the corner of Powell and Market Street in San Francisco, watching the cable cars climb the hills like mechanical miracles. The year is 1908, and the city is still rebuilding from the earthquake and fire that destroyed it 2 years ago. The air smells like wet concrete and fresh paint and possibility. You're a telegrapher at the Fairmont Hotel, one of the most opulent buildings in the city, and you are earning $50 a month. It is more money than your parents have ever seen at one time in their entire lives. You left home as soon as you could. You left the farm in Missouri, the chickens, the poverty, the endless cycle of planting and praying and losing everything to drought or hail or bad luck. You left your mother, who worked herself to exhaustion and still had nothing. You left your father, whose paralyzed legs made him dependent on your mother for everything. You left because staying felt like drowning. You took jobs in Kansas City, in Detroit, anywhere that was not the farm. You learned telegraphy because it was clean work, indoor work, work that required a brain instead of calloused hands. And when you heard about the opportunities in San Francisco, you packed your suitcase and took the train west, and you did not look back. San Francisco is everything Mansfield, Missouri is not. It is electric lights instead of kerosene lamps. It is crowded streets instead of empty fields. It is restaurants and theatres and shops full of things you cannot afford but love to look at. It is noise and chaos and life, and you are intoxicated by all of it. You work at the telegraph desk in the Fairmont Hotel, sending messages for wealthy guests who tip you more than your parents make in a week. You live in a boarding house with other working girls, and you go to dances on Saturday nights, and you feel for the first time in your life like you're someone who matters. And then you meet Gillette Lane. You're not sure where you met him. Maybe it was in Kansas City, before you came west. Maybe it was here, in San Francisco. The details blur in your memory. What you remember is that he was charming. He was 21 years old, only a year younger than you, and he had big ideas. He talked about making a fortune in advertising, in real estate, in whatever scheme seemed most likely to succeed. He was a salesman, a promoter, a newspaperman when it suited him. He had the kind of confidence that made you believe he could do anything. He made you feel like you were not just escaping your past, but building a future. He made you feel like you were special, and when he asked you to marry him, you said yes. You married him on March 24th, 1909, his 22nd birthday. It was a simple ceremony at City Hall, no family, no fuss. You quit your job at the Fairmont because Gillette said you would not need it. He said he had plans, opportunities, schemes that would make both of you rich. He said you would travel across the country, selling land and promoting investments, and you would see the world together. You believed him. You wanted to believe him. Because the alternative was going back to the farm, back to the poverty you had spent your entire life trying to escape. You spent the summer of 1909 traveling. You went to Missouri, to Ohio, to New York, to Maine. You promoted Florida real estate from the back of trains. You sold advertising space for schemes you barely understood, and you discovered something. You were better at it than Gillette. You made more sales. You earned bigger commissions. And the men who hired you both started asking for you by name. Gillette did not like that. He did not say it out loud, but you could see it in the way his jaw tightened when a client praised your work. You could feel it in the silences that grew longer between you. You were supposed to be the wife, the helper, the pretty face who made the pitch more appealing. You were not supposed to be better than him, but you were, and you knew it, and so did he. By the fall of 1909, you were pregnant. You had not planned it. You were not sure you wanted it, but it was happening. And there was nothing you could do to stop it. You told Gillette and he smiled and said it would be fine. He said they would figure it out. He said they would keep working, keep travelling, keep chasing the dream. You wanted to believe him, but something in his eyes told you he was lying. You were in Salt Lake City in November 1909 when the pain started. It was too early. You were only 6 months along. You knew that babies born this early did not survive. There were no hospitals that could save them. There was no technology, no incubators, no neonatal care. If a baby came at 6 months, it died. That was simply the way things were. The labour was fast and brutal. You do not remember much of it. You remember the pain. You remember the blood. You remember the midwife's face, the way she looked at you with pity and said nothing. You remember holding a tiny body that had never taken a breath, that would never cry or laugh or grow up. You remember burying him the next day in Mount Olivet Cemetery, in a plot so cheap it did not even have a marker. You remember standing in the cold, staring at the mound of dirt and feeling absolutely nothing. Gillette stood beside you. He did not cry. He did not speak. He just stood there, and then he walked away, and you followed him because you did not know what else to do. You went to Kansas City for the surgery. The doctors did not explain what they were doing. They just said it was necessary, that there had been complications, that it had to be done. You woke up sore and empty and broken, and they told you it was over. They did not say you would never have children again. They did not have to. You knew. You were 22 years old, and you had lost the only child you would ever have, and you decided in that hospital bed in Kansas City that you would never speak of it again. Not to your parents, not to your friends, not even to yourself. You would bury it as deep as you had buried that tiny body in Salt Lake City. You would pretend it never happened. You would move forward because that was the only direction left, and so you did. You went back to work. You went back to travelling with Gillette, back to selling and promoting and chasing schemes that never quite succeeded. You wrote letters to your parents, cheerful letters about your adventures and your happy-go-lucky existence. You never mentioned the baby. You never mentioned the surgery. You never mentioned the hollow ache that followed you everywhere. The ghost of a life that never was. You never mentioned it, and no one ever asked. You're back in San Francisco by 1910, and the city has lost some of its shine. The streets are still crowded, the cable cars still climb the hills, but you see it all through different eyes now. The eyes of someone who has lost something she can never get back. Gillette has a new scheme. It is always a new scheme. This time it is California real estate selling orchard land in the San Joaquin Valley to immigrants and investors who believe the American dream is just one good harvest away. You help him. You write the advertisements. You meet with clients. You smile and charm and close deals. You're good at it. Better than he is. And that fact sits between you like a wall neither of you will acknowledge. You move from town to town following the work. You live in boarding houses and cheap hotels. You eat in diners where the food is greasy and tasteless. You wake up in unfamiliar rooms and have to remind yourself where you are. It is not the adventure you imagined when you married him. It is exhausting and lonely and pointless. Gillette talks about the future, about the fortune you will make when the next big opportunity comes along. But the opportunities keep slipping through his fingers. He loses clients. He makes bad investments. He borrows money and cannot pay it back. And you start to realize that the only thing Gillette is truly good at is talking. You separate more than once during these years. Not officially, just periods where you take different jobs in different cities, where you live apart and pretend you're still a married couple when anyone asks. The separations are easier than being together. When you are apart, you do not have to watch him fail. You do not have to feel the weight of his resentment every time you succeed where he does not. You write to your mother during this time. You tell her about the towns you visit, the work you do, the sights you see. You make it sound exciting, adventurous, happy. You do not tell her about the loneliness. You do not tell her about the nights you lie awake in cheap hotel rooms and wonder what your life would have been like if you had made different choices. You do not tell her about the baby. You have trained yourself not to think about the baby. The years blur together. 1910, 1911, 1912, 1913. You move through them like a ghost, going through the motions, selling and smiling and surviving. You make enough money to send some home to your parents. It makes you feel less like a failure. It makes you feel like the sacrifices were worth something. By 1914, yes, the world is changing in ways you cannot ignore. War has broken out in Europe, and even though America is not involved yet, the effects are spreading. The real estate market is collapsing. No one wants to buy orchard land when the future feels uncertain. The money dries up, the opportunities disappear, and you and Gillette are broke again. You return to San Francisco because there is nowhere else to go. Gillette is unemployed. You take odd jobs, whatever you can find. You clean houses. You mend clothes. You tutor children. It is humiliating after all the years of selling dreams to other people, but you do it because you have no choice. You're living in a tiny apartment in a part of the city that smells like rotting fish and garbage. The walls are thin. You can hear your neighbours fighting, crying, living their own desperate lives. You sit at the window and stare out at the street, and you wonder how your life became this. You think about the baby sometimes, even though you try not to. You wonder what he would have looked like, whether he would have had your eyes or Gillette's, whether he would have been smart or stubborn or kind. You wonder if having him would have changed things, if Gillette would have been a better husband, if you would have been a better wife. But you know, deep down, that it would not have mattered. Some things are broken from the beginning. And then, in early 1915, something shifts. A friend tells you about a job opening at the San Francisco Bulletin, one of the city's major newspapers. They need an editorial assistant. The pay is not great, but it is steady, and it is indoor work, and it is a chance to do something that does not involve lying to strangers about land they will never be able to farm. You apply for the job. You meet with the editor, a man named Fremont Older, who has a reputation as a crusading journalist, a man who goes after corruption and injustice with the fury of someone who actually believes the world can be changed. He looks at your resume, at the odd collection of jobs and experiences, and he asks you one question. Can you write? You say yes. You do not tell him that you have been writing letters home for years, carefully crafted narratives that make your life sound better than it is. You do not tell him that you have written advertisements and promotional copy and telegrams for the wealthy and famous. You just say yes, and he hires you. You start work at the Bulletin in February 1915, and it is like waking up from a long, terrible dream. The office is chaotic and loud and full of people who care about things beyond money and schemes. They care about stories, about truth, about making readers feel something. And for the first time in years, you feel like you are doing something that matters. Fremont Older becomes more than just your boss. He becomes your mentor, your model, the person you wish you had met before you met Gillette. He teaches you how to write, really write, not just sell but communicate, not just charm but connect. He teaches you how to cut the fat from your sentences, how to build tension, how to make every word earn its place on the page. He is patient and demanding and brilliant, and you absorb everything he has to offer. You start on the women's pages, writing about fashion and society events, and all the things you're supposed to care about as a woman. But Older sees something in you, some hunger, some edge, and he gives you bigger assignments. He sends you into the city to write about things no respectable woman is supposed to see. Opium dens, gambling halls, prostitutes, criminals. You write a series called The City at Night, exploring the dark underbelly of San Francisco, and readers love it. You are good at this, better than good. You have found the thing you were always supposed to do, the work that makes sense of all the chaos and failure that came before. You are a writer, not a telegrapher, not a saleswoman, not a wife of a man who cannot provide. You are a writer, and for the first time in your life you feel like you have an identity that is entirely your own. But the marriage to Gillette is dying. You have not lived together properly in months. When your mother visits San Francisco in the summer of 1915 for the Panama Pacific Exposition, you and Gillette pretend to be a couple. He shows up for dinners, plays the role of the charming son-in-law, and then disappears back to whatever cheap room he is renting. Your mother does not ask questions. You do not offer explanations. You take her to the exposition, show her the Tower of Jewels and the exhibits from around the world, and you smile and act like everything is fine. But everything is not fine. You're drowning. The weight of the failed marriage, the lost baby, the years of pretending. It is all pressing down on you like a boulder you cannot move. You think about ending it. Not the marriage, your life. You think about how easy it would be to just stop, to take something, to go to sleep and not wake up. One night you try. You pour chloroform onto a cloth and hold it over your face, breathing in the sweet chemical smell. You lie down on your bed and wait for the darkness to take you. But it does not work. Your head pounds. You wake up hours later, sick and dizzy and still alive. And you realize that even at your lowest, even when you want to disappear, you're too stubborn to die. You get up. You wash your face. You go to work. And you decide that if you are going to survive, you need to get rid of Gillette. You do not have a dramatic confrontation. There are no accusations, no tears, no shouting. You just tell him it is over. You say the marriage was a mistake, that you both knew it, that staying together is only making both of you miserable. Gillette does not argue. He looks almost relieved. He packs his things and leaves, and you feel nothing. No sadness, no regret, no anger. Just a cold, empty relief. The divorce is not finalized until 1918, but in your mind, it is over in 1915. You have emotionally gotten rid of Gillette, as you will later describe it. You have severed the tie to the man who promised you everything, and gave you nothing but disappointment. You stay at the Bulletin until 1918. You write stories, edit copy, learn the craft of journalism from one of the best in the business. And when Fremont Older resigns in 1918, you realize it is time for you to leave as well. The newspaper without Older is just a job, and you have bigger ambitions now. In 1918, the same year your divorce is finalized, you publish your first novel. You call it Diverging Roads, and it is the story of a woman named Helen Davies, who is a telegrapher, who marries a traveling salesman, who discovers she is better at the work than he is, and who eventually leaves him to become a writer. It is your life, barely disguised, and writing it is both cathartic and terrifying. The novel explores the destructive effect of a woman's financial and personal freedom on the old institution of marriage. It asks the question you've been living with for years. Can a woman be both independent and married? Can she be successful without destroying the man who is supposed to be her partner? Your answer, lived and written, is no. At least not with a man like Gillette. The novel sells. Not spectacularly, but enough to make publishers take notice. Enough to make you realize that you can make a living as a writer, that you do not need a husband or a telegraphy job or a farm to survive. You can do this on your own. By the end of 1918, you're 31 years old. You are divorced. You are childless. You have no permanent home, no savings, no security. But you have something you did not have when you married Gillette. You have a career. You have a skill. You have a future that is entirely your own. And you have learned something crucial, something that will shape the rest of your life. You have learned that the stories people tell about themselves are often more powerful than the truth. You have learned that a good narrative can erase pain, rewrite failure, transform a life into something that makes sense. You have learned that words are weapons and shields and magic spells, and that if you control the story, you control how the world sees you. You will use that knowledge for the rest of your life. You will use it to build your career, to become one of the highest paid journalists in America, to travel the world and adopt sons and live a life of adventure and freedom. And you will use it decades later to rewrite your mother's life, to turn her messy, complicated, often painful memories into a story that the world will love. But for now, in 1918, you're just a young woman who has survived, who has lost a baby in a marriage, and every illusion she ever had about love and partnership, who has learned that survival is not about clinging to what you have, but about letting go of what is killing you. You are Rose Wilder Lane. You are a writer, and you're free. You're in San Francisco in 1919, and you are trying to decide who you want to be now that you're no longer anyone's wife. The city is celebrating. The war is over. The soldiers are coming home. The economy is booming. Everyone is talking about the future, about prosperity, about a new era of American greatness. You listen to them and feel nothing. You have heard too many promises about the future to believe in any of them. But you are working. You are writing for magazines, freelance pieces that pay better than the Bulletin ever did. You write about women and work and the changing roles of the sexes. You write about the suffragists who have finally, after decades of fighting, won the right to vote. You write about the new generation of women who are cutting their hair and shortening their skirts and refusing to live the way their mothers lived. You are one of them. You have been one of them before it was fashionable. You left home, earned your own money, married and divorced on your own terms. You have done everything the new woman is supposed to do, but you do not feel liberated. You feel exhausted. You think about the baby sometimes, late at night when you cannot sleep. You have trained yourself not to think about him during the day, not to let the memory surface when there are other people around. But at night, alone in your room, the thoughts creep in. You wonder what his name would have been, whether he would have been smart or kind or stubborn, whether he would have hated you for the life you could not give him, or whether he would have been proud of the woman you became. You never talk about him. Not to your friends, not to your editors, not to the men you occasionally see for dinner or drinks. You have learned that grief makes people uncomfortable, that loss is something you are supposed to move past, not carry with you. So you bury it. You add it to the pile of things you do not talk about. The poverty of your childhood, the paralysis of your father, the coldness of your mother, the failure of your marriage. You become an expert at building a public self that has nothing to do with the private self you hide. And it works. People see you as confident, ambitious, talented. They see a woman who has escaped the farm and made something of herself in the city. They see a success story. They do not see the nights you lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if any of it was worth it. In 1920, you make a decision. You're going to leave America. You're going to go to Europe, to write about the aftermath of the war, to see the world beyond San Francisco and Missouri. You have been offered a job writing for the American Red Cross, and you take it. You pack your suitcase, the same suitcase you packed when you left home all those years ago, and you get on a ship and sail across the ocean. Europe is devastated. The cities are in ruins. The people are starving. The war has left scars that will take generations to heal. You write about it all. The orphans, the refugees, the soldiers who survived but will never be whole again. You write about the resilience of people who have lost everything and are still trying to rebuild. And in writing about them, you begin to understand something about yourself. You are one of them. You are a survivor. You have lost a child, a marriage, every illusion you ever had about love and happiness, but you're still here. You're still writing. You're still trying to make sense of a world that makes no sense. You travel through France, through Italy, through the Balkans. You go to places most Americans have never heard of. You meet people who speak languages you do not understand, who have lived through horrors you cannot imagine, and you write their stories because that is what you do. You take the raw, messy, painful truth and you turn it into something people can read, something that makes them feel, something that matters. You stay in Europe for 3 years. You live in Albania for a while. In a remote village where the people have never seen an American woman before. You adopt a refugee boy named Rex Meta, not legally, but in your heart. You become his benefactor, his mentor, the closest thing to a mother he will ever have. You pour into him all the love you never got to give to your own child. It is not the same. It will never be the same. But it is something. By the time you return to America in 1923, you are a different person. You're 36 years old. You have seen the world. You have published books and articles in the most prestigious magazines in the country. You're one of the highest paid journalists in America. You have everything you thought you wanted when you were 22 and desperate to escape the farm. But you're not happy. You're successful, but you are not happy. And you're starting to realize that success is not the same thing as fulfillment. You visit your parents in Missouri. They're old now. Your father, Almanzo, is in his 60s, still struggling with the paralysis that has defined his life. Your mother, Laura, is in her 50s, still working the farm, still trying to make ends meet. They are proud of you. They brag about you to their neighbours, tell everyone about their daughter, the famous writer. But there is a distance between you that has nothing to do with geography. Your mother looks at you with a mixture of pride and something else. Confusion, maybe, or sadness. You have become someone she does not recognise, someone who has done things she could never have imagined. You have travelled the world, lived in foreign countries, made more money than she has seen in her entire life. And yet, when you sit in her kitchen drinking the same weak coffee she has been serving for decades, you feel like a child again. A child who is still trying to prove she is good enough, smart enough, worth loving. You do not tell her about the baby. You have never told her. She does not know that she had a grandson, however briefly, however tragically. She does not know about the surgery, the loss, the grief you have carried for 13 years. You do not tell her because you do not know how. Because telling her would mean admitting that you failed, that you lost something precious, that your life is not the triumph everyone thinks it is. So you stay silent. You smile and talk about your travels and your writing and your plans for the future. You send her money because that is the only way you know how to show love. You leave after a few weeks, promising to visit again soon, and you feel relieved when the train pulls away from the station. You go back to your life. You write more books, more articles. You make more money. You buy a house in Connecticut, a beautiful old farmhouse that reminds you of Rocky Ridge but is entirely your own. You fill it with books and antiques and all the things you could never afford as a child. You create a life that looks, from the outside, like everything you ever wanted. But at night, alone in your big house, you still think about the baby. You still wonder what he would have been like. You still carry the weight of a loss that has no name, no grave marker, no acknowledgement. You have buried it so deep that sometimes you almost forget it is there. But it is always there. It shapes every decision you make, every relationship you have, every word you write. And in 1930, when the stock market crashes and you lose everything, when you are forced to return to Missouri and live with your parents again, you will use everything you have learned about survival and storytelling to build something new. You will take your mother's memories and turn them into the Little House books. You will rewrite her life, just as you have rewritten your own. You will create a version of the past that is simpler, cleaner, more hopeful than the truth. You will do it because you need the money, but you will also do it because you are good at it. Because you have spent your entire life learning how to take pain and loss and failure and turn them into something beautiful. Because you know that the stories people tell about the past are more powerful than the past itself, and no one will ever know about the baby you lost in 1909. No one will know about the surgery that left you barren. No one will know about the grief you carried for the rest of your life. You will take that secret to your grave, and it will stay buried for another 50 years, until historians digging through death certificates and cemetery records will uncover the truth. But for now, in 1919, you're just a woman trying to figure out who she is without a husband, without a child, without any of the things women are supposed to have to make their lives meaningful. You are a writer, you're a survivor, and you are learning slowly and painfully that sometimes the only way to live with loss is to stop talking about it. You are Rose Wilder Lane, you're 32 years old, and you are free in all the ways that matter and all the ways that hurt. You need to understand something about Gillette Lane before you judge him too harshly. He was not a monster. He was not cruel. He was just a man who believed his own lies, and that made him more dangerous than any villain. You're in Kansas City in 1908, and you are about to meet the man who will ruin your life in the quietest, most unremarkable way possible. Your name is Rose Wilder, and you are 21 years old. You have been away from home for 3 years now, working as a telegrapher in cities that smell like coal smoke and possibility. You have learned to live on your own, to earn your own money, to walk down streets where nobody knows your name or your history. You're free from the farm, from your mother's exhaustion, from your father's broken body, from the endless cycle of poverty that defined your childhood. But freedom is lonely. You work 12-hour shifts in telegraph offices, translating Morse code into words, words into messages, messages into the lives of other people. You eat meals alone in boarding houses. You go to dances on Saturday nights and let men hold you while the band plays, but you never let them get close. You have built walls around yourself, walls made of ambition and fear, and the certainty that depending on anyone is a mistake you will never make. And then Gillette walks into your life, and all those walls start to crack. He is not handsome in the conventional way. His face is ordinary, his build unremarkable, but he has something better than good looks. He has charm. He has the kind of confidence that makes you believe he knows things you do not, that he has access to opportunities you have never imagined. He talks fast, moves fast, thinks fast. He is a salesman, a newspaperman, a promoter of schemes and dreams and fortunes just waiting to be made. He tells you about his plans. He's going to make a fortune in advertising, in real estate, in the booming markets of the West. He talks about San Francisco, about the rebuilding after the earthquake, about how smart people with ambition can make money hand over fist if they are willing to take risks. He talks about travel, about adventure, about seeing the country and living a life that is bigger than the small towns you have both escaped. And you believe him. Not because you are naive, but because you want to believe. You want to believe that there is someone out there who shares your hunger for something more, who understands that staying in one place is suffocation, who sees the world the same way you do. He asks you questions. He wants to know about your work, your dreams, your plans. He listens when you talk, really listens, and that is something you are not used to. Your mother never listened. She was too tired, too busy, too overwhelmed by her own survival to pay attention to yours. Your father was kind but distant, trapped in his broken body and his own disappointments. But Gillette listens. He makes you feel like you matter. He tells you he is 20 years old, but he looks older. There is something weathered about him, something that suggests he has already lived more life than most men his age. He has been working since he was a child, just like you. He has moved from town to town, job to job, always chasing the next opportunity, always believing that the big break is just around the corner. You recognize yourself in him. You see the same restlessness, the same refusal to accept the life you were born into. You see someone who understands what it means to want more than you have, to believe that you deserve more than what the world has given you. And when he asks you to marry him, you say yes. You do not tell your parents right away. You know what they will say. Your mother will worry. Your father will ask questions you do not want to answer. They will want to meet him, to know his family, to understand what kind of future he can provide. And you do not want to hear their doubts. You do not want their fears to infect your hope. So you get married quietly. On March 24th, 1909, at City Hall. It is his 22nd birthday. You realize later that he lied about his age when you met him, that he was only 21, not 20. It is a small lie, a harmless lie, the kind of lie people tell to make themselves seem more mature, more established. You do not hold it against him. Everyone lies about something. You quit your job at the Fairmont Hotel in San Francisco. Gillette says you will not need it, that you will be traveling together, working together, building a future together. He has a job lined up promoting real estate in Florida. The pay is good. The opportunities are endless. You will see the country, make money, live the kind of life you have always dreamed about. You believe him. You pack your suitcase, walk away from the steady paycheck and the security of the telegraph office, and you follow him into a life that exists only in his imagination. The first few months are exciting. You travel by train across the country, stopping in small towns and big cities, selling dreams to people who are just as desperate as you once were. Gillette talks to potential investors, pitches Florida land that he has never seen, describes opportunities that may or may not exist, and you help him. You smile and charm and close deals, because you are good at reading people, good at understanding what they want to hear. But something becomes clear very quickly. You are better at this than he is. The clients respond to you. They trust you. They ask for you by name. You have a way of talking to people that makes them feel safe, that makes them believe the dream is real. Gillette has the ideas, but you have the execution. He talks about the big picture, but you handle the details. He makes promises, but you are the one who delivers, and Gillette notices. He does not say anything at first, but you can feel it in the silences between you. You can see it in the way his jaw tightens when a client praises your work. You can feel it in the way he starts to interrupt you during meetings, as if he needs to remind everyone that he is in charge, that you are just his assistant, his helper, his wife. You start to argue, not about big things, but about small things that reveal bigger problems. He criticizes the way you talk to clients. He questions your decisions. He makes jokes at your expense in front of other people, jokes that are supposed to be funny but land like insults. And you start to realize that the man you married is not the man you thought he was. He's not ambitious. He's reckless. He does not have plans. He has fantasies. He does not want to build a future. He wants to stumble into a fortune without doing the hard work required to earn it. And worst of all, he resents you for being good at the work he's supposed to be doing. You're in a hotel room in Ohio in the summer of 1909 when you realize you're pregnant. You have missed your monthly cycle, and your body feels different, heavier, more fragile. You tell Gillette, and he smiles and says it will be fine. He says they will figure it out. He says the baby will not change anything, that you can keep working, keep travelling, keep chasing the dream. But you see the panic in his eyes. You see the way his smile does not reach his face. You see the way he looks at you, as if you have just become a problem he has to solve instead of a partner he chose to marry. You keep working. You keep travelling. You go to Missouri, to New York, to Maine. You sell land and promote schemes and pretend that everything is fine. But your body is changing. You're tired all the time. You feel sick in the mornings. Your clothes are getting tighter, and Gillette is pulling further and further away. He starts disappearing. He says he has meetings, appointments, opportunities that require him to travel alone. He leaves you in hotel rooms for days at a time, with just enough money for food and rent, and no explanation of where he is going or when he will be back. And you sit in those rooms, one hand on your growing belly, and you wonder what you have done. You are in Salt Lake City in November 1909 when the pains start. It is too early. You're only 6 months along. You know what that means. You have heard the stories from other women, the whispered tales of babies born too soon, babies who never take a breath, babies who are buried in unmarked graves because there is no point in pretending they ever lived. Gillette is there, but he is not there. He is physically present, but emotionally absent. He paces the room while you labour, and he does not touch you, does not hold your hand, does not say anything that might comfort you. He just paces like a caged animal, waiting for it to be over. The midwife comes. She's an older woman with rough hands and kind eyes. She tells you to push, to breathe, to let your body do what it needs to do, and you do. You push and scream and bleed, and finally the baby comes. He is tiny. So tiny you can hold him in one hand. He does not cry. He does not move. He is perfectly formed, perfectly still, perfectly dead. The midwife wraps him in a clean cloth and hands him to you. You hold him for a long time, staring at his face, memorizing every detail, his closed eyes, his tiny fingers, the bluish tint of his skin. You hold him and you feel nothing. No grief, no anger, no sadness. Just a cold, empty numbness that feels like the only appropriate response to a loss this complete. Gillette does not look at the baby. He stands in the corner of the room, his back to you, and he does not say a word. The next day, you bury him in Mount Olivet Cemetery. The grave costs almost nothing. There is no marker, no headstone, no record of his existence beyond a line in a cemetery ledger. You stand over the mound of fresh dirt, and you think about naming him. But what is the point? He never lived. He never breathed. He was never real in any way that matters. Gillette stands beside you. He does not cry. He does not speak. He just stands there, and then he walks away, and you follow him because you do not know what else to do. You go to Kansas City for the surgery. You do not fully understand what is happening. The doctors speak in euphemisms, in medical terms that mean nothing to you. They say there were complications, that something needs to be removed, that it is necessary for your health. You sign the paperwork because you have no choice. You trust them because you have to. You wake up from the surgery sore and empty. The doctors tell you it is done, that you will recover, that you will be fine. They do not tell you that you will never have another child. They do not have to, you know. You feel it in the hollow ache that has replaced the weight you carried for 6 months. You feel it in the finality of the loss. You're 22 years old and your body has betrayed you. Your husband has failed you. Your dreams have collapsed. And you have lost the only child you will ever have. Gillette does not talk about it. He acts as if it never happened. He starts making plans for the next scheme, the next opportunity, the next city. He talks about the future as if the past can simply be erased, as if grief is something you can outrun if you move fast enough. And you let him. Because the alternative is to sit still and feel everything. And you're not ready for that. You're not sure you will ever be ready for that. So you get up. You go back to work. You follow Gillette from town to town, from scheme to scheme, from failure to failure. And you never mention the baby. You never mention the surgery. You never mention the grief that follows you like a shadow, darkening everything you touch. You bury it. You bury it so deep that sometimes you almost forget it is there. Almost. You're back in San Francisco by early 1910, and the city that once felt like freedom now feels like a trap. Gillette has found another job, or at least he says he has. It is something to do with advertising, or maybe real estate, or possibly both. The details change depending on who he is talking to. You have learned not to ask too many questions, because the answers are always vague, always optimistic, always just a little bit dishonest. You're living in a cheap apartment in a neighbourhood where the buildings lean toward each other like drunks propping each other up. The walls are thin enough that you can hear your neighbours breathing. The smell of cabbage and garbage drifts up from the street and settles into your clothes, your hair, your skin. You scrub yourself every night, but you can never quite wash it away. You're working again, taking whatever jobs you can find. You clean houses for wealthy women who do not look at you when they give you instructions. You mend clothes for a tailor who pays you by the piece. You tutor the children of immigrants who are desperate for their sons and daughters to speak English without an accent. It is exhausting, humiliating work, but it is money. And money is the only thing standing between you and complete destitution. Gillette does not contribute much. His schemes never quite pan out. His paychecks are always late, or smaller than expected, or simply non-existent. He borrows money from you, money you have earned scrubbing floors and hemming trousers, and he promises to pay you back as soon as the next big opportunity comes through. But the next big opportunity never comes. There is always another delay, another complication, another reason why success is just out of reach. You stop believing him. Not all at once, but gradually, the way a rope frays strand by strand until one day it simply snaps. You stop believing his promises. You stop believing his plans. You stop believing that he is capable of being anything other than what he is, a dreamer without the discipline to make his dreams real. And the worst part is, you start to see yourself in him. You start to see the same desperation, the same refusal to accept reality, the same insistence that the next opportunity will be different. You have spent years running from your mother's poverty, only to recreate it in a different city with a different man. And the realization makes you hate yourself, almost as much as you hate him. You separate for the first time in 1911. Not officially. There is no paperwork, no announcement. Gillette simply takes a job in another city, and you stay in San Francisco. You tell yourself it is temporary, that it is just for work, that you're still married in all the ways that matter. But you know the truth. You are relieved. You are relieved to wake up in a room without him, to eat meals without his presence, to not have to watch him fail one more time. You write letters to your parents during this time. You make your life sound better than it is. You tell them about the work you are doing, the interesting people you're meeting, the exciting future you're building. You send them money, small amounts that you can barely afford, because it makes you feel less like a failure. If you can help them, then maybe your choices were not all mistakes. Maybe leaving home was the right thing to do, even if everything since then has been a disaster. Your mother writes back with news from the farm. Your father's health is declining. The crops are failing again. They are struggling to pay the mortgage. She never asks you for help directly, but you can read the desperation between the lines. And you send more money you do not have. Because what else can you do? You escaped, but they are still there, still trapped in the same cycle of debt and disappointment that you fled. Gillette comes back to San Francisco in 1912. He has a new scheme. This time it's California real estate, selling orchard land in the San Joaquin Valley to immigrants who believe they can build new lives in America. It is the same pitch you have been hearing for years, just with different details. And because you have no other options, because you are still legally his wife, because leaving would mean admitting that you made a terrible mistake, you go back to work with him. The pattern repeats. You travel, you sell, you make just enough money to survive, but never enough to get ahead. Gillette makes promises he cannot keep. Clients get angry, deals fall apart, and you are the one who has to smooth things over, to apologize, to salvage what you can from the wreckage of his failures. You start to fantasize about leaving. Not just leaving Gillette, but leaving everything. You think about getting on a train and going somewhere nobody knows you, somewhere you can start over with a new name and a new story. You think about what it would be like to simply disappear, to erase yourself from your own life and become someone else entirely. But you do not do it. You stay. Because leaving requires money you do not have. Because starting over requires energy you do not possess. Because the weight of your failures has pinned you in place, and you do not know how to lift it. And then, in 1914, the world starts falling apart in ways that have nothing to do with you. War breaks out in Europe. The newspapers are full of stories about trenches and poison gas and soldiers dying by the thousands. America is not involved yet, but everyone knows it is only a matter of time. The economy starts to shift. People stop buying land. They stop investing in dreams. They hold on to their money and wait to see what happens next. Gillette's schemes dry up completely. There is no work, no income, no opportunities. You move back to San Francisco because there is nowhere else to go. You live in the worst apartment yet, a single room with a shared bathroom down the hall and a window that overlooks an alley where rats fight over garbage. You are 27 years old, and you are living the life your mother lived, the life you swore you would never live. You are poor. You're trapped. You're married to a man who cannot provide, who cannot protect, who cannot do anything except drag you deeper into the pit you are both drowning in. You think about the baby sometimes. You've trained yourself not to, but the thoughts creep in anyway, usually at night when you cannot sleep, when the sounds from the street make it impossible to rest. You think about how old he would be now, 4 years old enough to walk and talk and ask questions. You wonder what he would have been like, whether he would have had your stubbornness or Gillette's charm, whether he would have loved you or resented you, whether his life would have been better or worse than the one you are living now. And then you push the thoughts away, because thinking about him does not change anything. He is dead. He has been dead for 5 years. Grieving him will not bring him back. It will only make the present more unbearable. You decide in the spring of 1915 that you have to do something. You cannot keep living like this. You cannot keep depending on Gillette. Keep following him from failure to failure. Keep pretending that things will get better. You need to take control of your own life, even if that means doing it alone. A friend tells you about a job opening at the San Francisco Bulletin. They need an editorial assistant. The pay is modest, but it is steady, and it is a chance to do something you might actually be good at. You apply without telling Gillette. You meet with the editor, a man named Fremont Older, and you lie about your experience. You say you have written for newspapers before, that you have edited copy, that you know the business. None of it is true, but you say it with enough confidence that he believes you. He hires you on the spot. You start work in February 1915, and it is like stepping out of a dark room into sunlight. The Bulletin office is chaotic and loud and full of people who care about things beyond money. They care about stories, about truth, about exposing corruption and fighting for justice. It is exhausting work, but it is meaningful work, and for the first time in years you feel like you're doing something that matters. Fremont Older becomes your mentor. He is everything Gillette is not. Disciplined, focused, brilliant. He has built a career on crusading journalism, on going after the powerful and corrupt, on believing that words can change the world. He sees something in you, some hunger, some potential, and he nurtures it. He teaches you how to write, really write. He shows you how to cut unnecessary words, how to build tension, how to make readers care about people they have never met. You absorb everything he teaches you. You work 12-hour days, staying late to edit copy, to rewrite articles, to learn the craft, and slowly you start to become good at it. You start to develop a voice, a style, a way of telling stories that makes people sit up and pay attention. Older gives you bigger assignments. He sends you into the city to write about things no respectable woman is supposed to see. You go to opium dens and gambling halls. You interview prostitutes and criminals. You write about the dark underbelly of San Francisco, the parts of the city that tourists never see, and readers love it. They love the grit, the honesty, the sense that someone is finally telling the truth about what the city really is. Your series, The City at Night, becomes one of the Bulletin's most popular features. People talk about it, they quote it, they wait for the next installment. And for the first time in your life, you feel like you have found the thing you were always meant to do. But the success creates a new problem. Gillette is not happy about it. He sees you going to work every day, earning a steady paycheck, building a career that has nothing to do with him, and he resents it. He makes comments about your job, dismissive little remarks that are supposed to sound like jokes, but are really criticisms. He says you are spending too much time at the office, that you're neglecting your marriage, that you're becoming the kind of woman no man wants to be married to. You ignore him. You have spent years listening to him, believing him, following him. You are done. You have found something that is yours, something he cannot touch or ruin, and you're not going to let him take it away from you. Your mother visits San Francisco in the summer of 1915. She has come to see the Panama Pacific International Exposition, the grand World's Fair that has turned the city into a showcase of art and technology and human achievement. You take her to see the Tower of Jewels, the magnificent structure covered in glass gems that sparkle in the sunlight. You walk with her through the exhibits, showing her wonders from around the world, machines that can fly, inventions that will change the future, art that takes your breath away. And the whole time, you are pretending. You are pretending that your marriage is fine, that Gillette is a good husband, that your life is everything you told her it would be. Gillette shows up for dinners, plays the role of the charming son-in-law, and then disappears back to whatever cheap room he is renting. Your mother does not ask questions. You do not offer explanations. You both pretend that everything is fine, because the alternative is too painful to acknowledge. But the truth is, you are drowning. The weight of the failed marriage, the lost baby, the years of disappointment and humiliation and grinding poverty, it is all crushing you. And you do not know how much longer you can keep pretending that you're fine. One night, alone in your apartment, you decide you cannot do it anymore. You cannot keep waking up in this life, in this body, in this marriage that has destroyed every dream you ever had. You pour chloroform onto a cloth, the same chloroform used in surgeries, the same chemical that can put you to sleep forever if you use enough of it. You hold it over your face and breathe in the sweet, sickly smell. You lie down on your bed and wait for the darkness to take you. But it does not work. Your head pounds. Your stomach heaves. You wake up hours later, sick and dizzy and still alive. And you realize something. Even at your lowest point, even when you want to die, you are too stubborn to let go. You get up. You wash your face. You go to work. And you make a decision. If you're going to survive, if you're going to live, you need to get rid of Gillette. You're sitting across from Gillette in a cheap diner in San Francisco in the fall of 1915, and you're about to end your marriage without raising your voice. The diner smells like burnt coffee and old grease. The floor is sticky under your shoes. The waitress is tired and does not bother to smile when she refills your cup. This is not the kind of place where dramatic conversations happen. It is the kind of place where people come to eat quickly and leave, where nobody pays attention to anyone else's business, which is exactly why you chose it. You have rehearsed this conversation in your head 100 times. You have imagined different ways to say it, different words to use, different emotions to summon. But now that you are here, sitting across from the man you married 6 years ago, the man who promised you adventure and gave you nothing but disappointment, you realize that none of the rehearsals matter. The truth is simple. The truth is cold. The truth is that you are done. You tell him it is over. You say it calmly, without anger, without tears. You say that the marriage was a mistake from the beginning, that you both knew it, that staying together is only making both of you miserable. You say that you are filing for divorce, that you do not want his money or his help or his permission. You just want him gone. Gillette does not argue. He does not beg. He does not even seem surprised. He just looks at you with those same eyes that once made you believe he was capable of great things, and he nods. He says he understands. He says maybe it is for the best. He says he wishes things had been different, and that is it. 6 years of marriage, one dead baby, countless failed schemes, and it ends with a nod and a shrug in a greasy diner where nobody is paying attention. He stands up. He leaves money on the table for his coffee, even though you are the one with the steady job, the one with money in your pocket. He walks out of the diner and you watch him go, and you feel absolutely nothing. No sadness, no relief, no regret. Just a cold, empty numbness that feels like the only appropriate response to the end of something that should never have begun. The divorce will not be finalised until 1918. The legal process is slow and expensive and requires paperwork you do not fully understand. But in your mind, it is over in 1915. You have emotionally gotten rid of Gillette, as you will later describe it. You have severed the tie, erased him from your future, decided that whatever comes next will be on your terms, not his. You stay at the Bulletin. You keep writing, keep learning, keep building a career that is entirely your own. Fremont Older continues to mentor you, to give you assignments that push you beyond what you thought you were capable of. You write about crime and corruption. You write about women and labour and the changing face of the city. You write about everything except yourself, because your own story is too painful, too messy, too full of failures you would rather forget. You develop a reputation as a writer who is fearless, who will go anywhere and talk to anyone to get a story. You interview murderers in prison. You spend nights in slums, documenting the lives of people the rest of the city pretends do not exist. You write with a bluntness and honesty that makes readers uncomfortable, and that is exactly what you want. You want them to see the world as it really is, not as they wish it were. And slowly you start to heal, not completely, not in any way that erases the past, but you start to feel like yourself again, like a person who has a purpose, who has value, who is more than just a failed wife and a grieving mother who will never have another child. You make friends at the Bulletin, not close friends because you do not let anyone get close, but colleagues who respect you, who treat you as an equal, who do not see you as someone to be pitied or protected. You go to dinners and parties and gatherings where people talk about ideas instead of schemes, where conversation is about more than just money and survival. And you start to imagine a different future, a future where you're not defined by your marriage or your childlessness or your poverty, a future where you are a writer, a professional, a woman who has made something of herself despite everything that tried to break her. In 1916, you're still at the Bulletin, and the world is changing in ways that feel both terrifying and exhilarating. The war in Europe is escalating. America is still neutral, but the pressure to join is building. Women are marching in the streets, demanding the right to vote, demanding to be treated as full citizens. The old rules, the old expectations are crumbling, and a new world is being born. You write about it all. You cover the suffragist marches, the labour strikes, the debates about whether America should enter the war. You interview women who are doing jobs that were once reserved for men, who are supporting their families, who are proving that the old ideas about what women can and cannot do are lies, and you see yourself in them. You see the same determination, the same refusal to accept limitations, the same insistence that the world must change because the old world is unbearable. You think about the baby less often now. The grief has not disappeared, but it has changed. It has become something you carry instead of something that carries you. You have learned to live with the loss, to function despite it, to build a life that has meaning even though it does not include the child you wanted. You do not talk about him. You never talk about him. But sometimes, when you are writing late at night, when the office is empty and quiet, you let yourself remember. You remember the weight of him in your hands. You remember his tiny, perfect face. You remember the way the earth looked when they covered his grave, dark and final and complete. And then you go back to work, because work is the only thing that makes the pain bearable. In 1918, 3 things happen that will change your life. First, Fremont Older resigns from the Bulletin. He has been fighting with the owners for years, pushing for stories they do not want to publish, defending journalists they want to fire. And finally, he has had enough. He walks away, and the Bulletin without Older is just another newspaper, just another job. Second, your divorce from Gillette is finalized. You are legally free. You're no longer anyone's wife. You are Rose Wilder Lane journalist, and that is the only identity you need. And third, you publish your first novel. You call it Diverging Roads, and it is the story of your marriage barely disguised. The main character is Helen Davies, a telegrapher who marries a travelling salesman named Kenneth. Helen is smart and ambitious. Kenneth is charming but weak. Helen discovers she's better at the work than he is, and her success destroys the marriage. She leaves him to pursue a career as a writer, and she never looks back. The novel is a brutal examination of what happens when a woman is too strong, too capable, too independent for the institution of marriage to contain her. It asks whether women and men can ever be true partners, or whether success for one must always mean failure for the other. Your answer, lived and written, is that marriage and female independence are incompatible, at least in the world as it currently exists. The reviews are mixed. Some critics praise the novel's honesty, its refusal to sentimentalize marriage or pretend that love conquers all. Others criticize it as bitter, as too harsh, as the work of a woman who has given up on happiness. You do not care what the critics think. You wrote the book for yourself to make sense of what happened, to transform your pain into something that might help other women understand their own lives. And if the world does not like it, that is the world's problem, not yours. The novel sells well enough to attract attention from publishers. They want more. They want you to write another book, to build a career as a novelist, to become the kind of writer who can make a living from words alone. And you realize that you can do it. You can leave the Bulletin, leave San Francisco, leave everything behind and start over. You can become a freelance writer, a novelist, a journalist who is not tied to any one place or any one employer. You can be free in the truest sense of the word. You make the decision in the fall of 1918. You will leave San Francisco. You will take freelance assignments for magazines, write articles about whatever they will pay you to write about. You will travel, see the world, live the kind of life you dreamed about when you were 22 and stupid enough to believe Gillette's promises. But this time, you will do it alone. This time, you will not depend on anyone but yourself. This time, you will not let anyone rewrite your story, or steal your success, or make you feel small. You pack your suitcase, the same suitcase you've been packing and unpacking for 10 years. You say goodbye to your colleagues at the Bulletin, to the city that broke you and remade you, to the life you built from the wreckage of your marriage. And you leave. You do not look back. You have spent too many years looking back, grieving what you lost, mourning what might have been. From now on, you will look forward. You will write your own story. You will create your own future. And if that future includes rewriting your mother's life, turning her memories into best-selling books, creating a version of the past that is simpler and cleaner and more hopeful than the truth, well, that is still years away. That is a different chapter in a different story. For now, you are Rose Wilder Lane, 31 years old, divorced, childless, broke, and free. You are a writer. You are a survivor. And you are finally, after years of false starts and failures and devastating losses, ready to become the person you were always meant to be. The man who promised you everything gave you nothing. But in the wreckage of his promises, you found something more valuable, yourself. You need to understand something about what it means to be a woman writer in 1919. It means you're not taken seriously. It means your work is published on the women's pages, next to recipes and advice columns. It means you are paid half what men are paid for the same work. It means you have to be twice as good to get half the recognition. And it means you learn to lie. You are Rose Wilder Lane, and you're standing in the offices of the American Red Cross in New York City in early 1920. You are 33 years old, divorced, childless, and desperate for work that will take you as far from your old life as possible. The interviewer is a middle-aged man with wire-rimmed glasses who keeps looking at your resume with an expression that suggests he does not quite believe what he is reading. You have told him you have extensive experience in journalism, that you have written for major newspapers, that you have covered crime and corruption, and all manner of serious subjects. All of this is true. You have not told him that you spent most of your marriage cleaning houses and mending clothes to survive. You have not told him about the baby. You have not told him about the suicide attempt. You tell people what they need to hear to give you what you want, and what you want is to get out of America. The Red Cross is looking for writers to travel to Europe and document the aftermath of the war. The continent is in ruins. Millions are dead. Cities are destroyed. Refugees are flooding across borders, looking for food, shelter, safety. Someone needs to tell their stories, and you want to be that someone. The interviewer asks why you want to go. You give him the answer he wants to hear. You believe in the mission of the Red Cross. You want to help. You want to use your skills to make a difference. You do not tell him the truth, which is that you are suffocating in America, that every street corner reminds you of failure, that you need to be somewhere nobody knows your history. He hires you. You will sail for Europe in March 1920. The pay is modest, but it includes travel expenses, room and board, and the chance to see the world. You accept immediately before he can change his mind. You write to your mother before you leave. You tell her you're going to Europe on assignment, that you will be writing about important work, that you will send money when you can. You do not tell her you are running away. You do not tell her that the thought of staying in America, of living anywhere near Missouri, makes your chest tight and your breathing shallow. Your mother writes back with worry disguised as pride. She says she's happy for you, that it sounds like a wonderful opportunity, that she hopes you will be careful. She also mentions, almost as an afterthought, that your father's health is declining, that the farm is struggling, that they are having trouble making ends meet. She does not ask for money directly. She has too much pride for that. But you can read between the lines. You send her $50, which is more than you can afford. You tell yourself it is payment for all the years of guilt, for all the ways you failed to be the daughter she wanted. You tell yourself that money is the only language of love you know how to speak. You sail from New York on a cold March morning. The ocean is grey and choppy, and you spend the first 3 days seasick, curled in your cabin, wishing you had stayed on land. But by the 4th day, the nausea passes, and you stand on the deck and watch the endless water, and you feel something close to freedom. Europe is devastated. You land in France, and the evidence of war is everywhere. Buildings with their sides blown off, exposing rooms like doll houses, streets cratered by artillery, towns that are just piles of rubble with a few walls still standing, and everywhere, people. Displaced people, hungry people, people who have lost everything and are trying to survive on nothing. You write about them. You interview mothers who are searching for children who disappeared during the war. You document the conditions in refugee camps, where people sleep on dirt floors and eat watery soup once a day. You write about the orphans, thousands of them, children who have no parents, no homes, no future, and you are good at it. You know how to talk to people, how to make them trust you enough to tell you their stories. You know how to take their pain and turn it into words that will make readers in America understand, will make them care, will make them send money to the Red Cross so the work can continue. Your articles are published in newspapers across America. People read them and weep. Donations pour in. and you realize that you have found your calling. Not just writing, but this specific kind of writing, taking suffering and transforming it into narrative, making tragedy comprehensible, giving voice to people who have been silenced by history. You travel through France, through Belgium, through the devastated landscape of the Western Front. You see trenches that are still filled with the bodies of soldiers nobody bothered to bury. You see fields that are so pocked with craters they look like the surface of the moon. You see towns where every single building has been destroyed, where the only signs that people once lived there are the foundations and the memories. And you write it all down. You fill notebooks with observations, with quotes, with details that will make your articles feel real. You learn to be invisible, to observe without being noticed, to extract stories from people who are too exhausted to realize they are being documented. You also learn something about yourself. You're comfortable with suffering. Not in a cruel way, but in a practical way. You do not flinch from the ugliness. You do not turn away from the pain. You look at it directly, absorb it, process it, and transform it into something useful. It is a skill you developed during your marriage, during the loss of the baby, during all the years you spent surviving things that should have broken you. Other writers struggle with the horror of what they are seeing. They drink to forget. They have nightmares. They break down in tears during interviews, but you do not. You remain calm, professional, detached. You do your work and then you go back to your room and write your articles, and you sleep soundly because you learned long ago that carrying other people's grief is easier than carrying your own. In the summer of 1920, you're sent to the Balkans. You travel to Albania, a country most Americans have never heard of. A place so remote and poor that it feels like stepping back in time. The roads are unpaved. The villages have no electricity, no running water, no modern conveniences of any kind. People live in stone houses with dirt floors, and they grow their own food and make their own clothes and exist in a world that has barely changed in centuries. You fall in love with it. Not with the poverty, not with the backwardness, but with the simplicity. These people do not have anything, but they are not consumed by the desire for more. They are not chasing schemes or dreams or fortunes that will never materialize. They accept their lives, find joy in small things, and survive with a dignity that makes your own struggles feel petty and self-indulgent. You stay in a village for several months, living with a family who speaks no English. You learn bits of their language, enough to communicate, and you write about their lives in a way that is honest and unsentimental. You do not romanticize their poverty. You do not pretend that their lives are idyllic. But you also do not condescend to them. Do not treat them as primitive or backward. You write about them as people, complex and contradictory and fully human. And in that village you meet a boy. His name is Rex Mehta. He is maybe 8 or 9 years old, an orphan who has survived the war by begging and stealing and doing whatever he had to do to stay alive. He is smart and resourceful, and completely alone in the world. You decide to help him. Not officially, not through any formal adoption process, because international adoption barely exists in 1920. But you become his sponsor, his benefactor, his mentor. You arrange for him to go to school. You send money to pay for his education, his food, his clothes. You write to him, long letters in broken Albanian and English, and he writes back in careful childish script. And in helping him, you discover something unexpected. You still have the capacity to love. Not romantic love, not the love you thought you would have for your own child, but a different kind of love, a practical love, a love that expresses itself through action rather than emotion. You love Rex because he needs you, and because you need someone to need you, and because in saving him you're saving some small part of yourself. You will keep in touch with Rex for years. You will pay for his education, help him emigrate to America, support him as he builds a life in a country he never imagined he would see. He will become a son to you, in all the ways that matter, and he will fill some of the emptiness left by the baby you buried in Salt Lake City. But that is still in the future. For now, in 1920, you're just a woman in a remote Albanian village, learning that there are many ways to be a mother, and that blood is not the only thing that makes a family. You return to America in late 1922, You have been gone for nearly 3 years, and the country has changed in ways that are both exciting and disturbing. Prohibition has turned alcohol into a forbidden pleasure, which means everyone wants it more than ever. Women have won the right to vote, and they are flooding into the workforce, into universities, into spaces that were once reserved for men. The economy is booming, jazz music is everywhere, hemlines are rising, morals are loosening. It is the beginning of the Roaring Twenties, and America is drunk on prosperity and possibility. You settle in New York City, in a small apartment that costs more than you can afford. You freelance for magazines, writing articles about your experiences in Europe, about the changing role of women, about anything editors will pay you to write about. The work is steady but not lucrative. You make enough to survive, but not enough to save, not enough to feel secure. And you are lonely, not for Gillette, not for any man, but for connection, for purpose, for a sense that your life is building towards something meaningful. You're 35 years old, and you have achieved everything you set out to achieve. You're a professional writer, you are independent, you have seen the world, but none of it feels like enough. You think about your parents more often now. They're getting old. Your father is in his 60s, his body breaking down from decades of hard labour and the lingering effects of diphtheria. Your mother is in her 50s, still working the farm, still trying to make Rocky Ridge profitable, still failing. They write to you with carefully worded requests for money, and you send what you can, and it is never enough. You start to feel the weight of their disappointment. You left them. You escaped the farm, escaped the poverty, built a life they could never imagine. And now they are old and struggling, and you are the only person who can help them. It is not fair. You do not owe them anything. You survive despite them, not because of them. But guilt does not care about fairness. You visit them in the summer of 1923. You take a train to Mansfield, Missouri, and the journey feels like travelling backward in time. The cities give way to towns, the towns give way to farms, and by the time you arrive, you feel like you have stepped back into the life you spent 15 years trying to escape. Rocky Ridge Farm is exactly as you remember it. The house is small and shabby. The fields are patchy and unproductive. The barn is falling apart. Your father sits on the porch, unable to walk without assistance, and he smiles when he sees you, but his eyes are sad. Your mother is in the kitchen, cooking a meal from whatever vegetables she managed to grow, and she hugs you with arms that are all bone and sinew. They are proud of you. They tell you they read your articles, that they show them to their neighbours, that they brag about their daughter, the famous writer. But underneath the pride is something else. Resentment, maybe, or envy, or just the bitter knowledge that you got out and they did not. You stay for a week. You help with chores, mend fences, cook meals. You slip money into your mother's apron pocket when she's not looking, because you cannot bear to hand it to her directly. And when you leave, when you board the train back to New York, you feel both relieved and guilty, and you hate yourself for feeling either emotion. You return to your apartment, to your freelance work, to the life you built, and you tell yourself that you have done enough, that you have helped them as much as you can, that you're not responsible for their happiness or their survival. But you know it is a lie. You know that as long as they are alive, as long as they are struggling, you will never be free of the farm. You will never escape the place you spent your entire childhood trying to leave. You're in New York City in 1924, and you're about to become famous. Not movie star famous. Not the kind of fame that comes with photographers and autograph seekers and strangers recognizing you on the street. But writer famous, which means your name starts appearing in magazines people actually read. Magazines like Harper's and the Saturday Evening Post. Magazines that pay enough that you can finally stop worrying about rent. You have been building toward this for years. You wrote articles about Europe, about Albania, about women and work and the changing world. You developed a style, a voice, a reputation as a writer who could make complicated subjects accessible, who could make readers care about people and places they had never heard of. And then you started writing biographies. Your first major biography is about Henry Ford. You spend months researching his life, interviewing people who knew him, visiting the factories where his automobiles are made. You write about his genius, his innovation, his vision for transforming America into a nation of car owners. But you also write about his flaws, his arrogance, his cruel treatment of workers, his anti-Semitism. The biography is published in 1924, and it is a sensation. Critics praise it. Readers buy it. Publishers want more. You are suddenly in demand, a biographer who can sell books, who can make the lives of famous men interesting to ordinary people. You write another biography, this time about Jack London. You admire London, his wildness, his refusal to be tamed by society's expectations. You write about his adventures, his struggles, his alcoholism, his death at 40. You write about him with sympathy, but also honesty, and readers love it. The money starts coming in. Not enormous sums, but steady income, enough that you can move to a better apartment, buy new clothes, eat in restaurants without calculating the cost of every meal. You can send more money to your parents, larger amounts that might actually make a difference. You can save for the first time in your life. You're 37 years old and you are finally successful. You have what you always wanted, a career, independence, security. You should be happy, but you are not. The problem is that success has not filled the emptiness inside you. You are still lonely. You still think about the baby, even though it has been 15 years since you buried him. You still wonder what your life would have been like if things had gone differently, if you had married a different man, if the baby had lived, if you had made different choices. You try to distract yourself with work. You take on more assignments, write more articles, research more biographies. You work 12-hour days, 14-hour days, until you're so exhausted that you fall into bed and sleep without dreaming. It is easier than thinking. It is easier than feeling. You also start to develop a philosophy, a way of understanding the world that makes sense of your own life. You become interested in libertarianism, in the idea that individuals should be free from government interference, that people should be responsible for their own success or failure. You read Herbert Spencer, read about survival of the fittest, about the idea that the strong thrive and the weak perish, and that is just the natural order of things. It is a cold philosophy, but it appeals to you. It explains why you succeeded when others failed. It was not luck, it was not privilege, it was strength, intelligence, determination. You survived because you were strong enough to survive, and those who did not survive were not strong enough. It is harsh, but it makes sense of a world that otherwise feels random and cruel. You start to write about these ideas in your articles. You argue that government welfare programs are counterproductive, that they make people dependent, that they rob individuals of the dignity that comes from self-sufficiency. You argue that taxation is theft, that the government has no right to take money from people who earned it and give it to people who did not. Your editors love it. Your readers love it. You're writing exactly what people in the booming 1920s want to hear, that success is a moral virtue, that poverty is a personal failure, that everyone gets what they deserve. And you believe it. You have to believe it, because if you do not believe it, then you have to confront the possibility that you succeeded because you were lucky, because you had opportunities other people did not have, because you were able to walk away from your parents and your past in a way that many women could not. And that is a thought you cannot afford to entertain. In 1925, you publish a novel called The Peaks of Shala, based on your experiences in Albania. It is a love story set against the backdrop of a remote, primitive culture. The novel is beautiful, lyrical, full of vivid descriptions of mountains and villages and people living in ways that seem almost mythical. The book sells well. Critics praise your ability to capture the essence of a place, to make readers feel like they are there. You're proud of it, proud of the way you transformed your experiences into art. But there is something dishonest about the novel, something you do not quite admit, even to yourself. You have romanticized Albania. You have made it seem more beautiful, more noble, more timeless than it really was. You have erased the poverty, the disease, the grinding hardship that defined the lives of the people you wrote about. You have done what you will later do with your mother's stories. You have taken the messy, complicated truth and turned it into something cleaner, simpler, more palatable. You have created a version of reality that is more appealing than reality itself, and it works. People love the novel. They want to believe in the existence of places where life is simple and pure and uncorrupted by modernity. They want to believe in the noble savage, the primitive who lives in harmony with nature, and you give them what they want, even though you know it is a lie. By 1926, you are one of the highest paid magazine writers in America. You are earning thousands of dollars per article, tens of thousands of dollars per year. You buy a house in Connecticut, a beautiful old farmhouse with land and trees, and a view that reminds you of the Missouri hills but is entirely your own. You furnish the house with antiques, with expensive rugs and paintings and furniture. You hire a housekeeper to clean, a gardener to tend the grounds. You live like a wealthy woman because you are a wealthy woman, and you enjoy every minute of it. But the stock market is starting to show signs of strain. The endless boom of the 1920s is built on speculation, on borrowed money, on the belief that prices will always go up and opportunities will always expand. Smart people are starting to worry. But you're not smart about money. You have spent your entire life being poor, and now that you have money, you spend it as fast as you earn it. You invest in the stock market because everyone is investing in the stock market. You buy shares in companies you know nothing about, because your broker tells you they are sure things. You believe him because you want to believe him, because you have spent your entire life looking for the big break, the opportunity that will finally make you secure. And then, in October 1929, the market crashes. You lose everything. Not all at once, but over the course of a few months. Your stocks become worthless. Your investments evaporate. The magazines that once paid you thousands of dollars per article stop buying. The publishers who begged for your book stop calling. By 1930, you are broke. You have to sell the house in Connecticut. You have to fire the housekeeper and the gardener. You have to move back to Missouri, back to Rocky Ridge Farm, back to the place you spent your entire adult life trying to escape. You're 43 years old, and you're right back where you started. Your parents take you in because they have no choice. They are old and poor and struggling, but you are their daughter, and they cannot turn you away. You move into your old room, the room you slept in as a child, and you stare at the ceiling and wonder how your life went so wrong. You have no money, no job, no prospects. The career you built has collapsed along with the economy. And the worst part is that you know it is your own fault. You spent everything you earned. You made bad investments. You believed in the same fantasies that you once mocked Gillette for believing in. You think about the baby sometimes, during those long, terrible months of 1930. You think about how old he would be now, 21 years old, an adult. Maybe he would have taken care of you. Maybe he would have been successful where you failed. Maybe he would have loved you in a way that nobody else ever has. But he is dead, has been dead for 21 years, and these thoughts are useless. You cannot change the past. You can only survive the present. And then, in early 1931, your mother shows you something. She shows you a manuscript she's been working on, 74,000 words about her childhood on the prairie. She calls it Pioneer Girl, and she thinks it might be worth something, might be the kind of story people want to read. You read it, and you see immediately that it is terrible, not the memories. The memories are vivid, real, powerful. But the writing is flat, factual, lifeless. It reads like a diary, like a list of things that happened, with no narrative arc, no tension, no crescendo. It is everything a good story should not be, but you also see the potential. You see the raw material of something that could be great. If someone with skill could shape it, could cut the fat, could turn it into a story people would want to read. You see an opportunity. You're sitting at your mother's kitchen table in the spring of 1931, and you are about to make a decision that will define both of your lives for the next 20 years. The manuscript of Pioneer Girl is spread out in front of you, pages and pages of handwritten text in your mother's careful, old-fashioned script. She's standing by the stove, pretending to be busy with something else, but you can feel her watching you, waiting for your verdict. You have read the entire thing, all 74,000 words, and you know exactly what needs to be done. The manuscript has to be cut down dramatically. The narrative has to be focused on a single period, probably her childhood in the big woods of Wisconsin, because that is the part with the most vivid details, the most compelling scenes. The tone has to change, has to become warmer, more intimate, more like a story being told around a fire instead of facts being recorded in a ledger. And most importantly, the voice has to change. Your mother writes like someone who is afraid of using too many words, afraid of being too dramatic, afraid of asking readers to care. You will have to rewrite it, give it colour and emotion and life. You tell her what you think. You're honest, but not cruel. You say the memories are wonderful, that there is real potential here, but the manuscript needs significant revision before any publisher will look at it. You say you can help, that you can take her words and shape them into something that might sell. Your mother nods. She does not argue. She knows you are the professional, the one who has written best-selling books, the one who knows how publishing works. She trusts you to do what needs to be done. What she does not know is that you are desperate. You are broke, unemployed, living in her house, and eating her food, and hating every minute of it. You need this manuscript to work. You need it to sell. You need it to save you from the failure you have become. So you take the manuscript to your room, and you start to rewrite it. You do not just edit. You do not just clean up the grammar and cut unnecessary passages. You transform it. You take your mother's memories and you run them through your own sensibility, your own voice, your own understanding of what makes a story work. You add details she never mentioned. You create scenes she never described. You invent dialogue that was never spoken. You take the raw material of her life and you turn it into something that feels more real than reality, more true than truth. You cut the manuscript down to 21 pages. You focus on the winter in the big woods, on Pa and the fiddle and the wolf and the long nights by the fire. You make it simple, warm, comforting. You make it exactly the kind of story people want to read during the Depression, when the world is falling apart and everyone is looking for something that feels safe and stable and good. And then, without telling your mother, you send it to Alfred A. Knopf, one of the most prestigious publishers in New York. You send it under her name, because you know that a book about childhood on the prairie will sell better if it is written by someone who actually lived it, not by a professional writer with a reputation for biographies of famous men. You wait. You do not tell your mother what you have done. You do not tell anyone. You just wait, and you hope, and you try to survive the crushing weight of your own failure. And then the letter arrives. Marion Fiery, an editor at Knopf, loves the manuscript. She wants to publish it. She wants more, another 15,000 words to make it a full book. You show the letter to your mother. You watch her face as she reads it, as she realizes that someone in New York thinks her memories are worth publishing. You see the disbelief, the joy, the hope that maybe, after 64 years of poverty and struggle, something good is finally going to happen, and you feel nothing, no joy, no pride, no satisfaction, just a cold calculation of what this means for you. It means income. It means a future. It means a way out of the hole you have dug for yourself. Your mother asks how this happened. When you sent the manuscript, why you did not tell her. You brush off her questions. You say it was just a hunch, just an opportunity you wanted to explore. You do not tell her that you rewrote her life without permission. You do not tell her that the manuscript she's holding is as much yours as it is hers. You tell her to get a tablet, to write the additional 15,000 words Knopf wants. You tell her exactly what to write, what scenes to include, what details to emphasize, and she does it because she trusts you, because she believes you are helping her, because she does not understand that you are not helping her at all. You are saving yourself. Over the next few months you work together on what will become Little House in the Big Woods. Your mother writes in pencil on cheap-lined tablets. You type up her pages, edit them, rewrite them, reshape them. You argue about details. You argue about tone. You argue about what should be included and what should be left out. But slowly the book takes shape, and it is good. It is better than good. It is exactly what the world needs in 1932, when the Depression has destroyed millions of lives, and people are desperate for stories about a simpler time, when hard work meant survival, when families stayed together, when America was young and full of possibility. Little House in the Big Woods is published in 1932. It sells well, not spectacularly, but well enough that Knopf wants another book, and then another, and then another. You write them together, you and your mother. She provides the memories. You provide the craft. She writes the first drafts. You rewrite them into something publishable. You work in her farmhouse, sitting at the kitchen table surrounded by the poverty she has never escaped, and you create books about pioneer life that will sell millions of copies and make both of you famous. But the money does not go to your mother. Most of it goes to you. You justify it by telling yourself that you are doing the real work. You're the one shaping the narrative, creating the characters, building the plot. Your mother is just providing raw material. She is the mine, and you are the sculptor. Without you, her memories would still be sitting in a drawer, unpublished and worthless. And besides, you need the money more than she does. She has the farm. She has your father. She has a life, however humble. But you have nothing except your skill and your ambition and your desperation to never be poor again. So you take the money. You take most of it. And you rebuild your life on the foundation of your mother's memories. By 1935, you have published 5 Little House books. You are earning thousands of dollars per year, not as much as you made in the 1920s, but enough to live on, enough to feel secure. You've moved out of Rocky Ridge Farm, rented a house of your own, started to rebuild the life that collapsed when the stock market crashed. Your mother is still living on the farm, still struggling to pay the mortgage, still working herself to exhaustion at an age when most women are resting. You send her money occasionally, small amounts that do not even cover the value of the work she's doing on the books, and you tell yourself it is enough, that you've helped her, that she should be grateful. But sometimes, late at night, when you're alone in your rented house, you think about the baby. You think about the life you lost, the child you never got to raise, the family you never got to have, and you wonder if the success is worth it. You wonder if anything is worth it. You're 48 years old, you're successful again, famous again, secure again. You have everything you thought you wanted, but you are still alone. You're still carrying the weight of losses you have never acknowledged, grief you have never processed, secrets you have never told, and you are still using other people's lives to build your own. First, Gillette's failures to launch your career, then your mother's memories to rebuild it. You've become very good at taking other people's stories and making them your own. You've become very good at rewriting history to serve your purposes. You've become very good at surviving, no matter what the cost. And if the cost is your mother's story, her voice, her legacy, well, that is a cost you are willing to pay. Because survival is all that matters. Survival is all you have ever known. You need to understand something about what it means to create a myth. It means you take the truth and you sand off all the rough edges. You take out the parts that make people uncomfortable. You add the parts that make people feel good. And you do it so skillfully that nobody can tell where the truth ends and the fiction begins. You are Rose Wilder Lane, and you're in the middle of the greatest con job of your life, and nobody suspects a thing. It is 1935, and you are sitting in your rented house in Missouri, looking at the latest royalty check from Harper & Brothers. Little House on the Prairie has just been published, the 3rd book in the series, and it is selling better than the first 2 combined. Children love it. Parents love it. Teachers are using it in classrooms. Book clubs are discussing it. The Little House books are becoming a phenomenon. And everyone thinks your mother wrote them. You've been careful. You've kept your involvement quiet. You let your mother's name appear on the covers. Let her do the occasional interview. Let her accept the praise and the recognition. And why not? She provided the memories. She lived the life. She is Laura Ingalls Wilder, the woman who survived the frontier, and that is the story people want to believe. But you know the truth. You know that every word in those books has passed through your typewriter, has been shaped by your hands, has been filtered through your understanding of what makes a story work. You know that the voice readers hear when they read Little House in the Big Woods is not your mother's voice. It is yours. Your mother's writing is simple, factual, unadorned. She describes what happened without interpretation, without emotion, without any sense of narrative arc. She tells stories the way someone might recount a day's events over dinner. This happened, then that happened, then we went to bed. But your writing is different. Your writing builds tension. Your writing creates characters readers care about. Your writing knows when to linger on a detail and when to skip ahead, when to show and when to tell, when to break a reader's heart and when to give them hope. The Little House books are not your mother's memories. They are your mother's memories as filtered through your craft, your skill, your understanding of how to manipulate emotion. They are collaborative works, but the collaboration is not equal. You are the architect, she is the supplier of raw materials, and you are getting paid accordingly. The contracts are in your mother's name, but you have made sure that most of the money flows to you. You handle all the negotiations with publishers. You manage all the financial arrangements. You're the one who corresponds with editors, who approves the final manuscripts, who makes all the decisions about what gets published and when. Your mother signs whatever you put in front of her. She trusts you. She believes you are helping her, protecting her interests, making sure she gets a fair deal. And you let her believe it, because it is easier than telling her the truth. The truth is that you need this money more than she does. She has the farm, humble as it is. She has your father, sick as he is. She has a life that is stable, if not prosperous. But you have nothing except your writing, and the Little House books are the only thing standing between you and another collapse. So you take the money, you take most of it, and you tell yourself that you deserve it, that you earned it, that without you these books would never exist. And maybe that is true, but it is also true that without your mother's memories, without her life, without her willingness to trust you, you would have nothing to sell. You are using her. You know you are using her, and you do not care because survival is more important than ethics, and you learned a long time ago that the world does not reward honesty. The Little House books are selling in part because they offer something America desperately needs in the 1930s, a vision of the past that is simpler, cleaner, more hopeful than the present. The country is in the grip of the worst economic depression in history. Banks are failing. Farms are foreclosing. Millions of people are out of work, hungry, desperate. The future looks bleak. But the Little House books offer an escape. They take readers back to a time when hard work guaranteed survival, when families stayed together, when America was young and full of possibility. They offer a vision of pioneer life that is romantic and nostalgic, and completely divorced from the brutal reality of what it actually meant to homestead on the frontier. You have left out the parts that would make readers uncomfortable. You have left out the hunger that came when crops failed. You have left out the disease that killed children by the thousands. You have left out the loneliness, the isolation, the grinding monotony of days that were all the same. You have created a fantasy, a myth, a version of American history that is more appealing than the truth. And people love it. They want to believe in the Little House version of the frontier, the version where everyone is brave and resourceful and good, where families are loving and supportive, where hard work always pays off. They want to believe it because the alternative is to confront the possibility that the American dream is a lie, that hard work does not guarantee success, that some people struggle and suffer and die despite doing everything right, and you give them what they want. Because that is what writers do. They create the stories people need, even if those stories are not true. By 1936, you have published 4 Little House books. You're earning a steady income from royalties, enough to rent a nice house, to buy new clothes, to live comfortably. You're not rich, not like you were in the 1920s, but you're secure, and security is worth more than wealth. But the work is exhausting. Your mother is getting older, slower, less able to produce the raw material you need. You push her to write faster, to remember more, to give you the details you need to flesh out the books. And she tries, but her memory is not what it once was, and sometimes she gets confused about what actually happened and what you have already invented for previous books. You argue with her more frequently now. You argue about details. Did the house in De Smet have glass windows or not? Did they really see a panther in the big woods? Or was it just a rumour? Did Pa really play the fiddle every night? Or is that just a motif you created to give the books a sense of continuity? Your mother insists on accuracy. She wants the books to reflect what really happened, even if what really happened is less dramatic than what would make a better story. But you know that accuracy is less important than emotional truth, that readers do not care about the facts as long as the story feels true. So you override her. You make decisions about her own life, her own memories, and you shape them to fit the narrative you're building. And she lets you because she does not have the strength to fight you, because she is old and tired and grateful that anyone cares about her stories at all. You know you are stealing from her, not money, although you're taking most of that too, but something more valuable, her voice, her story, her legacy. The books that will bear her name forever are as much yours as hers, maybe more, and she will never get credit for your contribution because you have made sure that your role remains hidden, and you tell yourself it does not matter. You tell yourself that she is getting what she wants, recognition, a modest income, the knowledge that her hard life meant something, and you are getting what you need, money, security, the ability to survive in a world that is hostile to women who have no husbands and no children, and nothing except their own skill to rely on. It is a transaction, a collaboration, a partnership in which one partner does most of the work and takes most of the reward, and the other partner is too grateful to complain. You're sitting at your desk in early 1937 when you get a letter from the editor at Harper & Brothers. They want another book. The Little House series is too successful to stop now. Readers are demanding more stories about Laura's childhood, her adolescence, her marriage. They want to know what happened next. Your mother does not want to write another book. She is 70 years old. Her hands hurt from arthritis. Her eyes are failing. She has written about her childhood in the big woods, her journey across the prairie, the hard winter in De Smet, her years growing up in a frontier town. She has given them everything she has. But you want another book. You need another book. The royalties are your primary source of income, and if the series ends, so does the money. So you push her. You tell her that readers are waiting, that she has a responsibility to finish the story, that she owes it to the children who love the books to tell them how Laura's story ends. You use guilt and flattery and whatever else you need to convince her to write one more book. And she does. She writes These Happy Golden Years, the book about her courtship and marriage to Almanzo Wilder. She writes it slowly, painfully, dredging up memories of a time when she was young and hopeful, and believed that love could save her from poverty. You take her manuscript and you rewrite it, just like you have rewritten all the others. You soften the rough edges. You make Almanzo more romantic than he probably was. You make their courtship sweeter, gentler, more like a fairy tale than the messy, complicated reality of two desperate people clinging to each other because they had no other options. You turn their marriage into a happy ending even though you know it was not. Even though you know that they spent decades struggling, failing, fighting, to survive on a farm that never produced enough to support them. Even though you know that the real story does not have a happy ending, that it just has survival, and survival is not the same thing as happiness. But readers do not want the truth. They want a story that makes them feel good, and you give them what they want. These Happy Golden Years is published in 1943. It is the last book in the original series, and it is the most popular of all. It ends with Laura and Almanzo driving off into the sunset, heading west to build a new life full of hope and love and faith in the future. It is a beautiful ending. It is also a lie. You're standing in your mother's kitchen in 1943, and you are watching her read the reviews of These Happy Golden Years. She's 76 years old now, frail and thin, her hands shaking as she holds the newspaper. But her eyes are bright as she reads the words of praise, the glowing descriptions of her books, the letters from children who say the Little House stories changed their lives. She looks up at you and smiles, and for a moment you see the young woman she once was, the girl who survived blizzards and grasshoppers and poverty, the woman who refused to be broken by a life that should have destroyed her. And you feel something you have not felt in years. Guilt. Not because you took her money, not because you rewrote her words, but because you robbed her of something more precious, the truth of her own life. The Laura Ingalls Wilder that readers know from the Little House books is not the woman standing in front of you. The Laura in the books is brave and cheerful and resilient. She faces every hardship with grace and determination. She never complains, never despairs, never questions whether all the struggle is worth it. But the real Laura is different. The real Laura is bitter about the poverty she never escaped. The real Laura resents the decades she spent working herself to exhaustion on a farm that never made money. The real Laura is angry at a world that promised her that hard work would be rewarded, and then broke that promise over and over again. You know this because you have lived with her, watched her, listened to her complain about the neighbours and the weather and the endless grinding difficulty of just surviving. You know that the cheerful pioneer girl is a fiction, a character you created to sell books. But your mother does not seem to mind. She reads the fan letters from children, and she smiles. She signs autographs at the occasional public appearance, and she basks in the attention. She has become Laura Ingalls Wilder, beloved author, and she seems content to inhabit that role, even though it is not really her. Maybe she knows what you have done. Maybe she has always known, and she has chosen not to say anything because the alternative is to admit that her entire legacy is built on a collaboration she never fully controlled. Or maybe she genuinely believes that the books are hers, that the words came from her, that you were just the typist who cleaned up her grammar. You will never know, you never ask, you never talk about it. You just take the royalty checks and smile and let her have the glory. But the guilt sits in your chest like a stone, heavy and cold and impossible to ignore. The war has been good for your finances. Soldiers overseas are reading the Little House books, sending them to their sisters and daughters and sweethearts. People on the home front are buying them as a reminder of what they are fighting for, a vision of America that is simple and good and worth preserving. You're earning more money now than you did even in the boom years of the 1920s. You have bought land in Connecticut, built a house, filled it with antiques and books and all the things you could not afford during the Depression. You have multiple bank accounts, investments, savings. You're secure in a way you have never been before, and your mother is still living on Rocky Ridge Farm, still struggling to pay the bills, still depending on the small percentage of royalties you allow her to keep. You tell yourself she does not need more. She has the farm. She has social security. She has enough to survive, and that is all she ever wanted, is it not? To survive. But sometimes, late at night, you think about the numbers. You think about how much money the Little House books have earned, and how little of it has gone to the woman whose life provided the raw material. You think about how you have become wealthy by selling her story, and how she has remained poor despite being the supposed author. And you tell yourself that this is fair, that you did the work, that without you those memories would still be sitting in a drawer. You tell yourself that she is getting what she deserves, but you know it is not true. You know that you have taken advantage of her, used her, exploited her in the same way Gillette once exploited you, and the knowledge sits in your stomach like poison. You're 56 years old and you have everything you once thought you wanted. You are successful, wealthy, secure. You have published dozens of articles, multiple books, built a reputation as one of the great writers of your generation. But you are also alone. You have no husband, no children, no family except the mother you have spent your entire life running from and using. You have money, but you have nothing to spend it on except yourself. You have freedom, but no one to share it with. And you still think about the baby. Even now, 34 years after you buried him in Salt Lake City, you think about him. You wonder what he would have been like, whether he would have been proud of you or ashamed, whether he would have loved you or seen through you the way you see through yourself. You have never told anyone about him. Not your friends, not your editors, not the biographers who will someday write about your life. He remains your secret, the loss you carry alone, the grief that has shaped everything you have done. And sometimes you wonder if that is why you rewrote your mother's life, because you could not bear to tell your own story, so you told hers instead. Because it was easier to create a myth about pioneer resilience than to confront the reality of your own failures. Because the truth about your life, the failed marriage, the dead baby, the decades of loneliness and desperation, was too painful to acknowledge. So you gave the world Laura Ingalls Wilder instead. You gave them a heroine who triumphed over adversity, who built a happy life despite hardship, who embodied all the virtues you wanted to have but never did. You gave them a lie. A beautiful, compelling, necessary lie, and they loved you for it. In the spring of 1949, you're visiting your mother at Rocky Ridge Farm. She's 82 years old now, and her health is failing. She moves slowly, speaks quietly, spends most of her days sitting in her chair by the window, looking out at the farm that defined her life. You sit with her in the kitchen, drinking weak coffee, and she talks about the past. Not the past from the books, but the real past. She talks about the hunger, the fear, the times when they did not know if they would survive the winter. She talks about burying her baby son, the boy who died when he was only a few weeks old, the loss that broke something in her that never fully healed. You listen, and you realize that you and your mother are more alike than you ever wanted to admit. You both lost children. You both survived marriages that nearly destroyed you. You both spent decades clawing your way out of poverty, only to find that financial security did not bring happiness. And you both learned to bury your grief so deep that nobody could see it, to present a face to the world that was strong and capable and fine, even when you were falling apart inside. For a moment, you consider telling her about your baby, about the boy you lost in Salt Lake City, about the surgery that left you barren, about the 39 years of silence and grief. You consider sharing your secret with the only person who might understand, but you do not. You cannot. Because telling her would mean admitting that you failed, that your life was not the triumph everyone thinks it was, that you are not the strong, independent woman you have spent decades pretending to be. So you stay silent, you listen to her talk about her losses, and you keep yours locked away, and the moment passes. Your mother dies in 1957. She is 90 years old. She dies in her sleep, in the farmhouse she spent 50 years trying to make profitable, surrounded by the things she accumulated over a lifetime of struggle. You're there when it happens. You hold her hand as she takes her last breath and you feel nothing. No grief, no relief, no emotion at all. Just a cold, empty numbness that feels familiar, that feels like the only appropriate response to loss. After the funeral, you go through her papers. You find letters, diaries, manuscripts, notes. You find evidence of her involvement in the Little House books. Proof that she contributed more than you ever gave her credit for. You find drafts in her handwriting, revisions she made, ideas she suggested. And you realize that maybe the collaboration was more equal than you wanted to believe. Maybe she had more control over her own story than you ever acknowledged. Maybe you were not the sole architect of the Little House myth, but just one of two builders working toward the same goal. Or maybe that is just what you want to believe, because the alternative is too painful. You burn most of the papers. You keep only the ones that support the story you want to tell, the story in which your mother was the author and you were just the helpful daughter who typed her manuscripts. You destroy the evidence that might suggest otherwise, because the myth is more important than the truth. The myth is what people believe. The myth is what will last long after you are both dead, and you have spent your entire life learning how to control the narrative. You're 70 years old in 1957, and you're standing in the farmhouse where your mother spent the last 50 years of her life, and you are holding a box of papers that will determine how history remembers both of you. The funeral was yesterday. Almanzo has been dead for 8 years, so it was just you and a handful of neighbours, people who knew Laura as the old woman who lived on the farm, not as the famous author of the Little House books. They said nice things. They talked about her kindness, her resilience, her long life. They did not mention the books. Most of them never read the books. But you know what the books mean. You know that in libraries and bookstores across America, a new generation of children is discovering the Little House series. You know that the books have sold millions of copies, that they have been translated into multiple languages, that they have become part of the American mythology. And you know that everyone thinks your mother wrote them alone. You look at the papers in the box. There are drafts in her handwriting, drafts in yours. There are letters from editors praising her work, letters from readers thanking her for the books. There are royalty statements showing how much money the books have earned, and how that money was divided. If anyone ever sees these papers, they will know the truth. They will know that you were not just a typist, not just a helpful daughter. They will know that you rewrote every word, that you shaped every scene, that you created the voice that made the book successful. They will know that Laura Ingalls Wilder, beloved author, was as much your creation as the books themselves. You could keep the papers, You could donate them to a library, let scholars study them, let the truth emerge. You could finally get credit for the work you did, for the decades you spent transforming your mother's memories into literature. But you do not want credit. You want something more valuable, control over the story. If people knew the truth about your involvement, they would ask questions. They would want to know why you hid your role. They would want to know about the money, about how much you took and how much your mother received. They would want to know about the contracts you negotiated, the decisions you made, the ways you controlled every aspect of the collaboration while letting your mother take all the public credit. And if they started asking those questions, they might discover other secrets. They might learn about the failed marriage you never talk about. They might find the death certificate for the baby boy buried in Salt Lake City, the child you erased from your own life story. They might understand that you spent your entire career creating myths because you could not bear to tell the truth. So you make a decision. You will destroy most of these papers. You will keep only the ones that support the official narrative. Laura Ingalls Wilder wrote the Little House books with editorial assistance from her daughter Rose. You will erase the evidence of your true involvement, just as you erased the baby, just as you erased every uncomfortable truth about your life. You carry the box to the fireplace. It is summer, so there is no fire burning, but you build one anyway. You crumple newspaper, stack kindling, strike a match. And you watch the flames grow. You start feeding papers into the fire, drafts in your handwriting, letters between you and publishers discussing revisions you made, financial records showing the real division of royalties, all the evidence of your work, your skill, your decades of labour turning to ash. Your mother's voice echoes in your memory. She trusted you. She believed you were helping her. She never knew how much you took from her, how much you controlled, how much you rewrote. Or maybe she did know. Maybe she knew all along and chose not to say anything. Because the alternative was to admit that her greatest achievement was not really hers. Maybe she preferred the lie because the truth was too painful. You will never know. She is dead, and you destroyed any evidence that might have revealed what she really thought, what she really felt about your collaboration. The fire consumes page after page. Your handwriting disappears into smoke. The proof of your genius, your craft, your transformation of raw memories into literature, all of it gone. And you feel nothing. No regret, no sadness, no anger. Just the same cold numbness that has defined your life since the day you buried your baby in an unmarked grave. You have spent your entire life learning how to erase things, how to erase pain, loss, failure, how to create stories that are cleaner and simpler than reality, how to control narratives, shape perceptions, make people believe what you want them to believe. And now you're doing it one last time. You're erasing yourself from your mother's story, ensuring that Laura Ingalls Wilder will be remembered as the sole author of the Little House books, and you will be just a footnote, a helpful daughter who typed manuscripts and offered suggestions. The last page burns. You stir the ashes with a poker, making sure nothing readable remains, and then you step back and look at what you have done. You have protected the myth. You have preserved your mother's legacy at the expense of your own. You have chosen control over recognition. And in that choice, you have revealed everything about who you are. You are the woman who lost a baby and never spoke of him. You are the woman who survived a failed marriage and turned it into a novel. You are the woman who rebuilt your mother's life into something more beautiful than it ever was. You are the woman who learned that the stories we tell about ourselves are more powerful than the truth. You are Rose Wilder Lane. You are 70 years old. And you are finally, after decades of work and sacrifice and compromise, free of your mother. But freedom feels like nothing. It feels like the same emptiness you have carried since you were 22 years old, standing over an unmarked grave, wondering what your life would have been if things had gone differently. You walk through the farmhouse one last time. The kitchen where you sat with your mother arguing about word choices and narrative arcs. The bedroom where she slept, dreaming of the prairie she left behind. The porch where your father sat, unable to walk, watching the world pass him by. This place destroyed your mother. She spent 50 years trying to make Rocky Ridge Farm profitable, and it never was. She worked herself to exhaustion, and she died with almost nothing to show for it except the books. The books you wrote, the books that made you wealthy while she stayed poor. You think about the money. The Little House books earned hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years. You took most of it. You justified it by telling yourself you did the real work, that you deserved it, that without you the books would never have existed. But standing in this shabby farmhouse, looking at the cracked walls and the worn furniture and the evidence of decades of poverty, you cannot quite maintain that justification. Your mother lived here, in this falling apart house, while you bought property in Connecticut, while you travelled the world, while you lived the kind of life she never imagined. You sent her money occasionally, small amounts that barely covered her expenses, while you kept the bulk of the royalties from books that bore her name, and she never complained. She never asked for more. She accepted whatever you gave her and said thank you, because that was who she was. Grateful, humble, too beaten down by life to demand what she deserved. You wonder if she knew, if she understood that you were using her, exploiting her, taking her memories and her name and turning them into your fortune while leaving her to struggle on this miserable farm. You will never know, and maybe that is for the best. You lock the farmhouse door behind you. You will sell the property, dispose of the furniture, erase the last physical evidence of your mother's existence, and you will take the remaining papers back to your own home, where they will stay hidden until after your death. When you die, someone will find them. Scholars will study them. They will piece together the truth about the collaboration, about your role, about the money. And the myth of Laura Ingalls Wilder, pioneer author, will crack open, revealing the complicated, messy reality underneath. But by then you will be dead. By then it will not matter. You drive away from Rocky Ridge Farm. In your rearview mirror, you watch the house get smaller and smaller until it disappears entirely, and you think about all the things you've destroyed over the course of your life. Your marriage, your relationship with your mother, the truth about your own story. But you also think about what you have created, the Little House books, which have brought joy to millions of children, the myth of pioneer resilience, which has given people hope during hard times, the legacy of Laura Ingalls Wilder, which will outlast both of you. You created all of that. You took your mother's raw, painful memories and you transformed them into something beautiful. You lied, you manipulated, you exploited, but you also created something that matters, something that will endure. And in the end, maybe that is enough. Or maybe it is not. Maybe nothing is ever enough, because you lost the only thing that truly mattered when you were 22 years old, and everything since then has been just survival, just going through the motions, just trying to fill a hole that can never be filled. You drive through the Missouri hills, heading back to your own home, your own life, and you think about the next chapter of the story, the chapter that nobody knows yet, the chapter about how you became a millionaire while your parents starved. That is a story you will never tell. That is a truth you will take to your grave. But the numbers do not lie. The bank accounts do not lie. The property deeds do not lie. And someday, when historians start digging through your papers, they will uncover the financial records you thought you destroyed. They will see the deposits, the withdrawals, the careful accounting of every dollar you earned from the Little House books. And they will understand what you did. They will understand that you built your fortune on your mother's poverty. That you became wealthy by selling her story while keeping most of the profits. That you lived in comfort while she struggled to pay the mortgage on a farm that never produced enough to support her. They will understand that the collaboration was not a partnership. It was an exploitation. And when that truth emerges, the world will have to decide what to do with it. Will they forgive you because the books brought so much joy? Will they condemn you for using your mother? Will they understand that survival sometimes requires us to do terrible things? You do not know. And sitting in your car on this summer day in 1957, you do not care. You survived. That is all that matters. You survived your childhood poverty, your failed marriage, your lost baby, your mother's expectations, the depression, the war, all of it. You survived by learning to control narratives, to create myths, to turn pain into profit. And if that makes you a villain in someone else's story, so be it. You are Rose Wilder Lane. You are 70 years old. You are wealthy, successful, and completely alone. And you would not change a single thing, except maybe one. You think about the baby one last time, the boy you buried in Salt Lake City 58 years ago, the child who never took a breath, the loss that defined everything that came after. And you wonder, as you have wondered 1,000 times before, what your life would have been like if he had lived. But that is a story that will never be told. That is a truth that died with him. You drive on. The road ahead is empty. The past is behind you. And the future is whatever you decide to make it. Which is exactly how you like it. To be continued.